I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network, and this is a breaking news alert. In record time, the federal judge in the Central District of California, Judge Carter, has denied John Eastman's request to reconsider the finding made by Judge David Carter that the crime fraud exception applies to the email communications by John Eastman and others, and thus requiring John Eastman to turn over these records to the January 6th committee forthwith. John Eastman filed a motion for reconsideration earlier. He also asked that Judge Carter stop or stay the enforcement of the January 6th committee's subpoena until Eastman was able to file an appeal before the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. I reported on this earlier. I said that there is no way that Judge Carter is going to grant the relief that John Eastman is seeking. John Eastman's motion for reconsideration was completely frivolous, and sure enough, Judge Carter, in record time, like within hours, rejected John Eastman's request and is going to compel John Eastman to turn over these records to the January 6th committee, which Judge Carter found to be within the crime fraud exception. Now, one of the things that John Eastman is going to do and is in the process of doing is appealing the order to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and he will ask the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals to stay the enforcement of the January 6th committee's subpoena. But one of the things here is that he's going to have to move very quickly to do that, and the Ninth Circuit is going to have to rule very quickly because John Eastman has waited pretty much like almost 9 days since Judge Carter made the ruling. Eastman's basically done nothing, made this request to Judge Carter at the 11th hour, and these records are about to be due to the January 6th committee, and so we'll see what happens next here. But, you know, John Eastman's not exactly showing that he's the most diligent lawyer here. And you'll recall what this case is all about. John Eastman filed a lawsuit after the January 6th committee subpoenaed his email records and other records. John Eastman used to be a professor at Chapman University, which is a law school in California, in the Orange County area. That's why Eastman had to file his lawsuit in the Central District of California, Southern Division, which is the jurisdiction of Chapman University, or covers the jurisdiction of Chapman University. In this lawsuit, John Eastman claimed that his communications with other individuals about Trump were covered by the attorney-client privilege with Donald Trump. And in order to overcome the attorney-client privilege, the federal judge, Judge Carter, had to find that there was an exception that existed to override or to vitiate the attorney-client privilege. Otherwise, where there is an attorney-client privilege, those communications are deemed to be confidential, and others can't get, third parties can't have access to those communications, unless, of course, the lawyer and the client is engaged in ongoing fraudulent conduct, or not, it doesn't have to be ongoing, it could just be engaged in criminal conduct, and it's a two-step test, and that the documents and emails or communications being sought in a subpoena are in furtherance of the underlying criminal conduct. And here, Judge Carter reviewed in camera, meaning that the January 6th committee was not able to look at these emails at first. First, Judge Carter would conduct a review pursuant to this lawsuit that John Eastman filed to block or to get an injunction to stop the January 6th committee from accessing these emails on the basis of attorney-client privilege. Judge Carter reviews it, and he says, look, there is an attorney-client relationship here between Eastman and Trump, but I do find that a crime took place that Trump and Eastman were engaged in criminal conduct, obstruction and conspiracy relating to their conduct on January 6th and leading up to January 6th to obstruct the peaceful transition of power, to obstruct the proceedings, the counting of the electoral votes on January 6th, and a conspiracy to essentially overthrow our democracy, a conspiracy to stop the peaceful transition of power. So step one in determining whether the crime fraud exception applies, was there criminal conduct? Judge Carter said yes. Now, were these specific documents at issue in furtherance of the crime? And Carter said, look, there's about 500 documents or so that are mostly attorney-client privilege. Well, they're all attorney-client privilege, but are not in furtherance of the crime. But there are a small subset of documents, there's about 8, that are in furtherance of the underlying criminal conduct. A group of 4 basically show that Trump was signing false verifications about voting statistics that Trump knew was false to claim that dead voters were voting and felons were voting and people who had moved were voting. When Trump knew the stats to be false, nonetheless, he filed false verifications. And there were other email communications where John Eastman had said that we're just filing some lawsuits regardless of the merits in order to delay. And Judge Carter said that's not in furtherance of any legitimate activity. That's in furtherance of the underlying criminal conduct. And so those documents need to go to the January 6th committee. So what did John Eastman do? John Eastman filed a motion for reconsideration to Judge Carter and said, please reconsider your order. I think you got it wrong. I want you to take a look at the overall context here. And I need a little more time, if you can, to before I will turn over my records to the January 6th committee. And hey, by the way, can you stay the enforcement of the January 6th committee subpoena until I can appeal your order to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals? And what do you think Judge Carter's going to do? So this is the same Judge Carter who, after Judge Carter made the ruling that the crime fraud exception applied, Donald Trump put out a statement on his social media platform that said that Judge Carter is a, quote, judge, and called Judge Carter a political hack and a know-nothing, and said that Judge Carter knows nothing about the case. And Trump said that he doesn't even know anything about the case. Trump said that he's unaware of the case. And he goes, I'm not even represented in the case. Trump, your lawyer, John Eastman, is the one who filed the case. What do you mean you're not represented? It's literally a case involving your lawyer who is asserting attorney-client privilege, which you are the client. The attorney-client privilege is a privilege that can only be asserted by the client. So he's saying that you're the one who's asserting it. So a complete lie that Trump is saying that the attorney-client privilege, or he's unaware of the proceeding there. But you think that Judge David Carter, after being called out like that by Trump, is going to say, oh, bend over backwards and say, hey, I'm going to help. I'm going to try to help. I'm going to reconsider the order that I already made for the person for the litigant who's actually threatening me. And frankly, with Judge Carter denying what John Eastman's request to reconsider and to give him more time, I actually think that Judge Carter's going a little bit light on John Eastman, because one of the things that I thought Judge Carter should do, but look, Judge Carter's a very disciplined judge and he doesn't want theatrics in his courtroom. But I was saying, look, call Trump in. If Eastman wants you to reconsider and look at the full context of things, and Donald Trump's claiming he doesn't know about the proceeding, which he obviously knows about the proceeding because his lawyer's filing it, well, then call Trump in. Have Trump be a witness, have Trump testify. He's going to plead the fifth and say, I want to speak to the purported client and ask the client in an evidentiary hearing questions about the attorney-client privilege to see if there even is an attorney-client relationship. I just thought that'd be a way to get Trump into court. But the theatrics of it is, Judge Carter's a no-nonsense judge. He's not going to, I don't think he'll do that in his courtroom. But nonetheless, I think there was a real opportunity to do that. But look, I think the January 6th committee is going to get these records. We'll see what happens with Eastman's appeal to the Ninth Circuit, whether the Ninth Circuit will grant a temporary stay of the enforcement of the subpoena. It's an emergency application that would have to be filed. And I'm sure then after he loses in the Ninth Circuit, like all of these, right-wing, no offense to clowns, but like cowardly clowns, I'll say, cowardly clowns, like, the Kelly Wards and the Lindsey Grahams and the, all these people just, whining to the Supreme Court for emergency relief, not to have to talk about January 6th. It's like, come on, just such a critical day in our nation's history. You're that scared, you're that cowardly, then you go and you give all of these speeches and lectures and social media posts and all of this. But when you're asked these basic questions, you run away. They run away like cowards. That's one of the biggest things for me. I don't know about it for you, but it's just how freaking cowardly these people. We know they're traitors. They're definitely traitors. They're definitely weird. They're traitors. They're weird. It's strange. But what also just repulses me is just how freaking cowardly these people are. And they go into their little echo chamber and they say all their false things, and then they run away, and everything is an appeal not to have to provide information about January 6th, about the insurrection, about a free and fair election. At least have the courage to talk about it. Traitors. We'll keep you posted on what John Eastman does next. I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Hit the subscribe button. We're on our way to 1 million subscribers. Thanks to you. In addition, check us out at patreon.com/MeidasTouch, patreon.com/MeidasTouch. Until next time, I'm Ben Meiselas.
MeidasTouch is unapologetically pro-democracy. And look, we know you are too. So please make sure you check out our best-selling shirt and our best-selling gear, the unapologetically pro-democracy gear. And hey, while you're at it, make sure you check out my favorite shirt and one of our most famous designs. It wasn't rigged, you're just a loser. At store.MeidasTouch.com. That's store.MeidasTouch.com.